How's it going YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today guys what the bring to you is going to be my updated meta tier list, and I do hope that you enjoyed today's video as we're going to be talking about the future of the game at the moment, because we have a brand new ban list, we have Dude coming out, we have Lil, we have Anaheim, we have a lot of things that are happening all at once right now, very quickly. And I want to make sure that you have as much information at your fingertips as possible, so that when you go to make a choice for a deck, then start testing for an event, that you have as much information to make that choice. And it's definitely interesting because after going through a few of these, I feel like the format is still fairly open-ended, and I'll talk to you about why that is as we go through each deck. The first one today is going to be Mitsurugi Ryzeal. Now, this list is definitely going to be an interesting one because you'll see things go really high or really low that you might not expect to see, and we'll talk about why that is. Ryzeal Mitsurugi, I have it tier 2. The deck is still really solid for what it is. I feel like it's still pretty okay because you can bridge Mitsurugi into Ryzeal, but you cannot bridge your Ryzeal into Mitsurugi. There are a lot of one-card starters for Mitsurugi, so this is still pretty fine to run together regardless. It shouldn't matter too much, but I put this lower because I think there's going to be a different Ryzeal variant that's just miles better than this variant at the moment. That's going to be Onomat Ryzeal Zodiac. Being able to clear a board with your Zodiac cards and then just go into your Ryzeal combo is pretty crazy because the Zodiac cards are threatening with cards like Borbo. While we're on the topic of Mitsurugi, I'm definitely going to be putting the Orcus Mitsurugi in Don't. This is a deck that can still do okay things. I think that Orcus needs a new engine, which still could go back to being the Horus engine, but the fact that you can't bridge these engines at all is a little tough, especially since the Orcus engine is still a little bricky, and then trying to just be like, draw the cards, right, without being able to bridge is not the best option for a deck like this. If it was a little more consistent, I'd say otherwise, but as it stands right now, I probably wouldn't attempt to run this at an event because I don't think that it's going to be like that good. The next thing I have for you today is going to be Draco Tail, and that's still going to be tier 1. I think the Draco Tail is not good enough to be like the craziest deck, but just from the base standard of the decks that we get to play right now, I feel like this is going to be a strong enough deck to be in tier 1. I think this is going to be something that we could even move the Ryzeal pile down to 1.5 and Draco Tail be just like a half tier above because of the fact that we do have the new Draco Tail card coming out with the brand cards, which is a really cool variant, and we have a lot of very promising builds so far for Draco Tail. So definitely a deck moving forward that I think is going to be very strong. And, you know, even talking about just like decks in general that are the best right now, Yummy is just best by a country mile. This deck is crazy. It's going to be really good moving forward just because of the amount of support that we have for this deck. We have Link Rivo now. The deck plays crazy into hand traps. The deck can just play so many different hand traps than like 18 in the main deck and like 24, 26 post side is crazy. I just think this deck is definitely going to be the best deck. One that I think is super underrated is actually going to be Punk Fiendsmith. And this is still going to be sitting in tier 2 for now, but I think this deck is something that we will end up seeing as being one of the best decks for tier 2. Just because this deck has done phenomenal at events, but it's been so low in popularity that we haven't seen enough of it. But I do think this deck is like the sleeper pick always, because this is a deck that has a lot of power and no one's really looking at it, which is definitely interesting to me because it has some results. The deck does well, and I could see it being a deck moving forward. RB, I'm just going to put this deck in Rogue. The new support sucks, and I wish this deck could be better, but it's still something that you could see, but I don't really think that we're going to see like a ton of it. It's just not going to be good enough with the support that was pretty lackluster. We have Lunalight next, and we'll put that in 1.5. Lunalight's really solid. If you can stick the Lager Dancer, it's really hard to out, but at the same point, I don't really feel like this is still the best option because, again, just through so many hand traps and interruptions, I feel like this is still a deck that will struggle with that, and that's going to be a problem. Bottom of 1.5, like the absolute bottom of 1.5 is VSK9. I think this deck is dog. I think this deck is really bad because, and hear me out, this deck already bricked really bad. And people were like, well, you just sub in the Rescue Ace engine. That doesn't do anything on its own. Yeah, you can sub in like Durandal if you want to, but now you're susceptible to a slew of hand traps, right? I don't feel like a deck that already bricked by getting 4 amazing starters ripped from the deck is going to make that better, right? And prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Tell me this deck is still amazing. I don't see it. If it's already bricking that bad, and I played the deck for a while, if it's already that bricky, removing the best consistency cards in the deck isn't going to help that. And I know there's a lot of people still coping in this deck. The cope will ensue until we get results from the YCS. So we'll definitely have to wait and see, but I don't think this deck is going to be like that good moving forward. Still playable, but not like that good. Another tier 1 opportunity here is just going to be Mitsurugi. I do think that there's going to be a lot of builds of Mitsurugi that are going to be really cool. I think right now we're going to see like Mitsurugi Zoo. Again, just like break the board with Zoo cards and then just Mitsurugi combo and clean up. I think that's going to be something that we see quite a lot. But Mitsurugi in and of itself is still completely untouched. The deck is still really crazy and something that we will see a lot of. Bottom of tier 2, like way bottom tier 2 is Ritual Beast. The deck loses extremely hard to Charmies. People might be playing a little less Lancia now because they're not necessarily too concerned about the Malice deck. But we'll talk about that when we get there. I just don't think that Ritual Beast can compete with everything above it right now. But we'll have to wait and see with how the format develops. Memento K9. This is still going to be 1.5. The deck is not hit at all. The deck can combo into the sun. You just have to be really, really good with the deck because the deck is super complicated and has the highest ceiling over format. So that's something that you definitely have to keep in mind. The deck is a big brain deck and you have to know what you're doing with it. Mermail and White Forest, they're still just tier 2. I would play any other deck above them, but I mean, it's still going to be a viable option in the format. Sandwich True Draco Stun, I think this is going to be a very real deck that you see. This is not something that you should necessarily prep for, besides just playing the 3 Lightning Storm that we have again. But this is definitely going to be a deck that you see that is very annoying. And you'll probably end up seeing it in a room. Crystron, see, this is what's crazy too, is that like there's so many decks that you'll see here in 1 and 1.5 just because there's so many different viable options. This is going to be sitting next to Memento. I think either or is going to be a really solid deck. I do think that the Crystron deck might end up being a little bit better though, just because you remove the 2 copies of Inclusion and then you add 2 copies of Noroi and then the 3rd copy wherever you want to fit it. And Noroi is 1 card full Crystron and K9 combo. So at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter that you lost Inclusion. Even though it's multi-purposed, I still think that Noroi is one of the best additions that deck could have gotten, period. Now, you might be surprised with where I put Malice, but there's a very strong reason behind that. Malice still has the ability to compete through backup, 1 Wizard, 1 Dormouse. If you want to play Silent Mining, play Silent Mining. You have AI Meet You. You have so many ways to get to Dormouse. And even if you don't have just Dormouse, you have like White Rabbit, which is fine, right? But I think the biggest thing that people are overlooking is without Splash Mage, it's my same thing with Yummy right now, where it's like less Obedience Schooled, the less you're worried about locking out your zones. The less Splash Mage, the less you're worried about locking yourself into Cybers. I think that people just revert back to playing Fiendsmith Malice, and they just start comboing with the Fiendsmith cards and then going into Malice cards. I think Malice is a deck that will end up siding Impulse with other hard go second cards, and then combo really hard with Fiendsmith, and when they're forced to go second, swap into having like your Impulses and a 6 draw to try to get to your combo and your engine. I do think that this is going to be a deck that is still very prevalent in the metagame, and it's something that we will still have to watch out for. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, the deck's probably dead. I don't think so. I really don't. I think the deck's still around. And, you know, I don't really play the deck anymore myself, but it's still a deck that, with me going to Lil, I still think this deck is going to be in the room. Next up here, we have Centurion. This deck is just Rogue. I probably wouldn't, but, you know, it's still something where if we have an uptick in Rizio cards because of Zoo cards and what have you, I feel like Detonator is just going to give this deck a really hard time again. The Fire King deck is still probably one of the best tier 2 options we have at the moment. I think this deck is super solid, and it's going to be something that can pop the yummy cards, can play Impulse, has a lot of options this format. It can even play the new Dominus card, which is really crazy. So I think that Fire King is like one of the most underrated decks that we have at the moment. Next up here is DDD. I would not. I genuinely would not bring this to an event. There is not enough in the deck that allows it to play the game. You have to open like all engine, or you're probably not doing a whole lot, which is very problematic in a format run by hand traps. Not to mention, this deck really can't play through that many hand traps, especially Imperm on the Link 2. So, not a deck that I would play. It's not the time for it. I'm just putting out my 2 cents on this. I would not play this deck even with the new support right now. Blind Second Gem Knight is just going to be somewhere in tier 2. It's just Tenpai 2.0. Branded 2 Branded Fusion, though, is really cool. I think this deck has a lot of potential. I would put it at like bottom 1.5. I think that Branded has a lot of opportunities to come back right now, especially with Draco Tail cards in the deck. I think that it's very solid. Top of tier 2, it would be Striker. I think this deck is absolutely fantastic with your diagram right now. I think that it's going to have a really good time into the format. And I'll probably be making content on Striker Draco. If you want to see that, definitely let me know down below in the comment section. Bell has always still just been like this tier 2 deck that is really solid, but no one wants to play it because it has the biggest issue with every hand trap and every Charmy. It just loses from every direction from like every card. So it's really hard to want to play this deck, even though it's a huge temptation by many, because the deck itself is still very good when you don't get Charmied, when you don't get Drolled, when you don't get double, triple hand trapped, where decks like Yummy can just play through that, right? And maybe it's just showing the age of the deck, but the deck itself still has a lot of opportunity. I just don't think that it's right now. Blue Eyes, again, just bottom 1.5. I think that our format's massive right now. I think Blue Eyes has no spice. It has no seasoning. It has nothing crazy, nothing nuanced about it. It's just Blue Eyes. But it works. It does. And, you know, it's a deck that if you want to pick it up and play it, you'll have an okay time. Pure K9, I probably wouldn't, but it's probably going to be somewhere in tier 2. Everyone's boarding Barrier now. So, again, just a deck full of Exceed summons. I would not want to be a part of that. And I know that Yummy is a lot of synchros, but at the same time, you can still make, like, pretty good half boards. And pass on, like, Name plus Link still does everything you need it to, right? So definitely a very interesting game that we're in now. But definitely let me know what you think about this down below in the comment section. I'd really appreciate it. I'll catch you on the next video. Thank you.